You think you're attracted to her smile, her laugh, her personality. But what if I told you something that will completely shatter how you see attraction? You've never actually seen the women you're obsessed with. You've been falling in love with a ghost. Picture this. She texts you back after 3 days with just, "Hey." Your heart races. You read it 15 times, analyzing every letter. Meanwhile, your friend who's genuinely interested in you gets ignored because she doesn't trigger that same desperate feeling. Here's the question that changes everything. What if the woman you can't stop thinking about isn't even real? And here's why this matters right now. Every day you don't understand this. You're programming your brain to repeat the same painful pattern. The longer you wait to see what's really happening, the deeper this unconscious program becomes. In the next 20 minutes, I'm going to show you exactly what your unconscious mind has been doing with every unavailable woman you've ever met. And once you see it, you can never unsee it. Think about her right now. That woman who occupies space in your head. Because we're coming back to this exact moment, and when we do, everything about how you see her will have changed forever. So why do these women feel so magnetic? Why does unavailability seem to make them irresistible? Let's start with what your brain is actually doing when it encounters the perfect woman who's just out of reach. Here's what no one tells you about attraction. The women you find irresistible aren't actually irresistible at all. They're just unavailable. And that unavailability? It's like catnip to a very specific part of your brain that you don't even know exists. Think about it. When was the last time you felt that electric, can't eat, can't sleep obsession with someone who was completely available? Someone who texted back immediately, who made their feelings crystal clear, who wanted exactly what you wanted, exactly when you wanted it? Exactly. It doesn't happen. But the woman who's complicated? The one with the boyfriend she's not sure about? The one who's focusing on her career right now? The one who gives you just enough attention to keep you hooked, but never enough to satisfy you? Your brain lights up like a Christmas tree. This isn't coincidence. This isn't bad luck. This is psychology. And it's been documented by researchers for decades. Carl Jung, the legendary psychologist who mapped the hidden territories of the human mind, made a discovery that will fundamentally change how you think about attraction. He found that every man carries within him what he called the Anima, an unconscious feminine archetype that acts like an invisible magnet in your psyche. This isn't some mystical concept. This is documented psychology. Your anima was formed before you could even speak, shaped by your earliest encounters with the feminine, starting with your mother, your sisters, every woman who left an impression on your developing mind. But here's the twist that Jung discovered. The anima doesn't want what's available. She wants what mirrors her own elusive nature. Think about intermittent reinforcement, the psychological principle that makes slot machines so addictive. You pull the lever, sometimes you win, mostly you lose, but you keep pulling because you never know when the next win is coming. The uncertainty creates an almost chemical dependency. Your anima operates on the exact same principle. Every unreturned text, every mixed signal, every moment of hope followed by disappointment. It's feeding a pattern that was programmed into your unconscious decades ago. You're not weak for feeling this way. You're experiencing what Jung called repetition compulsion, your psyche's attempt to resolve unfinished emotional business from your past by recreating familiar dynamics in your present. But here's the question that's going to haunt you for the next 28 minutes. What if this pattern isn't random? What if every time you think you're choosing her, your anima is actually choosing for you? What if the woman you can't stop thinking about, the one who seems so perfect, so magnetic, so mysteriously out of reach, isn't really her at all? What if she's just a projection of someone you've never consciously met, but who's been living inside your head your entire life? Someone who has very specific tastes, and what she craves most is exactly what you can never have. Right now, as you're listening to this, there's a woman sitting in your mind. She's been there your whole life. She has opinions about every woman you meet. She whispers in your ear during first dates. She's the one who decides whether your heart skips a beat or stays perfectly calm. And you've never seen her face. Jung called her the Anima, the unconscious feminine side that every man carries within his psyche. But here's what most people get wrong about the Anima. She's not some mystical concept from psychology textbooks. She's as real as your own thoughts, and she's been making your relationship choices for you since you were a teenager. Think about the last woman who made you feel that electric pull, that instant, inexplicable attraction. What was it about her? Her smile, her laugh, the way she moved? Wrong. What hooked you wasn't anything she did. It was how perfectly she matched the invisible template that's been living in your unconscious mind since childhood. You see, your Anima was built from fragments. Every meaningful encounter with the feminine, your mother's voice when she was happy, your first grade teacher's kindness, even characters from movies that moved you as a boy. All of these experiences layered together to create an internal image of the perfect woman. But here's where it gets twisted. Your Anima doesn't represent women as they actually are. She represents what you unconsciously believe you need to feel complete. And if you grew up with emotional unavailability, a distant mother, parents who withheld affection, caregivers who were inconsistent with love, then guess what your Anima learned to crave? That's right. Distance, uncertainty, the familiar pain of wanting what you can't have. This is why Jung called falling in love a form of projection. You're not actually falling for her. You're falling for your own reflection. The Anima projected onto a real person who happens to trigger all the right unconscious buttons. It's like wearing invisible glasses that make certain women appear to glow with irresistible appeal. But the glow isn't coming from them, it's coming from inside you. Remember that woman you can't stop thinking about? The one who seems so mysteriously perfect? What if I told you that her perfection is just your Anima recognizing herself in another person? What if that magnetic pull you feel isn't love at all, but your unconscious mind trying to complete itself through someone else? Because here's what no one tells you about the Anima. She doesn't want you to be happy, she wants to be fed. And what feeds her most is the sweet agony of wanting what you'll never truly have. That's not love. That's psychological hunger. And it's been driving your choices in ways you never imagined. That invisible woman living in your mind? She grows up, just like you do. Jung discovered that the Anima evolves through 4 distinct stages as a man matures. And here's the shocking part. Most men get stuck at stage 2, forever. Let me show you what I mean. Stage 1 is Eve, pure physical attraction. This is teenage you, driven by basic instinct and biology. Simple, straightforward. The Anima at this level just wants what looks good. Stage 2 is Helen. And this is where everything goes wrong. Helen of Troy, the face that launched 1,000 ships. The woman so beautiful that men destroyed entire civilizations just to possess her. This is where the Anima becomes obsessed with the impossible ideal. Sound familiar? At stage 2, your Anima stops caring about real women and becomes addicted to the fantasy. She wants the untouchable goddess, the perfect Instagram model, the woman who's so stunning, so magnetic, that of course she's already taken. Of course she's emotionally unavailable. Of course she's just out of reach. This is where that woman you can't stop thinking about lives. In stage 2, in the realm of impossible fantasies. And here's the cruel irony. The more unavailable she is, the more perfectly she fits your stage 2 Animus needs. Because a stage 2 Anima doesn't actually want to catch her prey. She wants to chase it forever. But Jung didn't stop there. He mapped 2 more stages that most men never reach. Stage 3 is Mary. Spiritual love, genuine devotion, the capacity to see women as real human beings instead of projections. This is where you can actually love someone for who they are, not who you imagine them to be. Stage 4 is Sophia, wisdom, where the Anima becomes your inner guide instead of your inner addict, where you choose partners consciously instead of being chosen by unconscious patterns. Think about every relationship disaster in your past, every woman who broke your heart, every time you fell harder for someone who was pulling away. Were you operating from stage 2, chasing Helen while ignoring the Marys right in front of you? Because here's what Jung realized: as long as your Anima stays stuck in stage 2, you'll keep attracting stage 2 situations. Unavailable women, impossible relationships, beautiful disasters. The woman behind your eyes will keep demanding what she's always demanded, the sweet torture of wanting what you can never have. Want to know why you're stuck in stage 2? Let me take you back to when you were 7 years old. Picture this. Little you, desperate for your mother's attention. Maybe she was working 2 jobs. Maybe she was emotionally distant. Maybe she only showed love when you achieved something. Or maybe she was inconsistent, warm one day, cold the next. What did you learn about love? You learned that love is something you have to earn, something that comes and goes, something that feels best when it's just out of reach. This is what psychologists call your attachment style, the blueprint for love that gets burned into your brain before you can even tie your shoes. And here's the devastating truth: that 7-year-old is still choosing your girlfriends. Jung called this repetition compulsion, your unconscious mind's obsessive need to recreate familiar patterns, even when they hurt you. It's like your psyche is stuck on repeat, trying to solve a puzzle from childhood by using the same broken pieces over and over again. Think about that woman you can't stop thinking about, the one who's emotionally unavailable. Does she remind you of anyone? Not physically, emotionally. The way she makes you feel when she pulls away, the way you have to work for her attention, the way her love feels conditional, uncertain, just barely within reach. Sound like anyone who raised you? Your stage 2 Anima isn't really attracted to her. She's attracted to the familiar dance, the same dance you learned in your childhood kitchen, your childhood living room, watching how love was given and taken away. Researchers have tracked this for decades. Children who experience emotional unavailability from their caregivers grow up unconsciously seeking partners who replicate that same emotional unavailability. It's not masochism, it's not stupidity. It's your attachment system trying to master an old wound by recreating it. You're not choosing unavailable women because you're broken. You're choosing them because unavailability feels like home. But here's the question that changes everything. What if that 7-year-old's understanding of love was wrong? What if the emotional distance you learned to crave was never actually love at all? What if every unavailable woman you've ever chased was just a ghost from your past, wearing a different face? But there's another player in this game. One you've never met, but who's been sabotaging your relationships your entire life. Jung called it the shadow, the parts of yourself that you've rejected, denied, or pushed into the darkness of your unconscious mind. And here's what nobody tells you about the shadow. It doesn't stay hidden. It gets projected. Now, I've done an entire deep dive into Jung's shadow theory that explains how the people who trigger you most, the ones who hate you, who irritate you, who push your buttons, are actually your greatest teachers. It's linked in the description below, and I highly recommend watching it after this video to understand the full power of shadow projection in all areas of your life. But for now, here's how the shadow specifically plays out in romantic attraction. Think about that nice guy you know, the one who always complains that women only date jerks. He's convinced he's nothing like those bad boys who break hearts. But watch what happens when he finally gets the girl. Watch how quickly the nice guy becomes possessive, manipulative, controlling. The very traits he despised in other men. They were living in his shadow all along. Your shadow contains every quality you've told yourself you don't have. If you pride yourself on being emotionally stable, your shadow holds your chaos. If you see yourself as independent, your shadow carries your desperate need for approval. And here's the twisted part. You're unconsciously attracted to people who embody your shadow traits. That emotionally unavailable woman you can't stop thinking about. She's not just triggering your stage 2 anima. She's also carrying parts of your shadow that you refuse to acknowledge in yourself. Maybe you tell yourself you're not needy, so you're drawn to women who are mysteriously self-contained. Maybe you pride yourself on being emotionally available, so you're attracted to women who withhold their feelings. Maybe you see yourself as drama-free, so you find yourself chasing women who create emotional chaos. You're not falling in love with her. You're falling in love with the disowned parts of yourself that she's reflecting back to you. This is why these relationships feel so electric, so magnetic, so impossible to walk away from. She's not just some random person. She's a living mirror of everything you've hidden from yourself. Jung discovered that we don't just project our light onto others, we project our darkness too, and the shadow's favorite hiding place, romantic relationships. So every time you find yourself inexplicably drawn to someone who's wrong for you, ask yourself, what part of me is she carrying that I refuse to see? Because until you reclaim those shadow pieces, you'll keep chasing ghosts. So now you know the truth. Your stage 2. Anima is projecting fantasy. Your childhood wounds are driving familiarity seeking. Your shadow is attracting its mirror image in others. But here's the question that changes everything. How do you tell the difference between projection and genuine connection? Because once you understand how projection works, you start seeing it everywhere. Every attraction becomes suspect. Every feeling becomes questionable. You might even start wondering, have I ever actually loved someone real, or have I just been falling in love with myself? Jung discovered there are specific signs that reveal when you're caught in the projection trap. First sign, instant intensity. When projection is happening, attraction feels electric, magnetic, almost supernatural. It's love at first sight, or at least obsession at first sight. Why? Because you're recognizing yourself. Your unconscious is screaming, "There I am! There's the part of me I've been looking for." Real connection. It builds. It deepens. It grows stronger as you actually get to know the person, not weaker as reality sets in. Second sign, idealization followed by inevitable disappointment. With projection, she starts as a goddess and ends as a human being who can't possibly live up to your unconscious demands. You fall in love with perfection and wake up next to a person with flaws, needs, and her own agenda. Genuine attraction accepts humanity from the beginning. You're drawn to her, including her imperfections, not despite them. Third sign, you know almost nothing about her actual personality, but you're convinced she's the one. Projection creates instant certainty based on zero information. Your anima is completing the picture with fantasy, filling in all the blanks with exactly what she wants to see. Fourth sign, she triggers intense emotional swings. One text makes you euphoric, no text makes you devastated. Her moods become your moods. Her availability controls your self-worth. This isn't love, It's emotional dependency disguised as romance. Real love creates stability, not chaos. It adds to your life instead of consuming it. But here's the most important sign. When someone is carrying your projection, you can't actually see them. You're looking at them, but you're seeing your own reflection. Their actual thoughts, feelings, needs, and desires are invisible to you because you're too busy seeing what you want to see. Jung called this psychological blindness, and it's why projected relationships always fail. You can't love someone you can't see. So that woman you can't stop thinking about. Ask yourself, do you know her favorite book? Her deepest fear? What makes her laugh until her stomach hurts? What she was like as a child? Or do you just know how she makes you feel? So here's the million-dollar question. If you've been projecting your anima onto unavailable women your entire life, how do you bring her home? Because that's what this has always been about. Every woman you've chased, every heart you've broken over someone you couldn't have, you weren't really seeking her. You were seeking the missing feminine part of yourself. Jung called this process anima integration, and it's the difference between spending your life chasing ghosts and actually becoming whole. But here's what most people get wrong about integration. You don't integrate the anima by thinking about her. You integrate her by expressing her. Remember those 4 stages we talked about? Most men are stuck at stage 2, the Helen phase, because they're trying to find their inner woman out there instead of developing her in here. Stage 3 is Mary, where you develop genuine spiritual and emotional depth. Stage 4 is Sophia, where the anima becomes your inner guide, your source of wisdom and creativity. But how do you actually move from stage 2 to stage 4? First, creative expression. The anima speaks through art, music, writing, any form of creation that comes from the soul rather than the mind. When you write, paint, or create something authentic, you're not just making art, you're giving your anima a voice. Jung discovered that men who suppress their creative impulses often become obsessed with unavailable women because they're trying to connect with their own creativity through someone else. Second, dream work. Your anima appears constantly in your dreams, usually as different women representing different aspects of your inner feminine. Start paying attention. Keep a dream journal. Those dream women aren't random. They're your unconscious mind showing you the parts of your anima that want to be integrated. Third, emotional awareness. The anima carries your capacity for deep feeling, intuition, and emotional intelligence. Most men have been taught to cut themselves off from these qualities and then wonder why they feel incomplete. Integration means saying yes to your full emotional range, not just anger and lust, but tenderness, vulnerability, the ability to be moved by beauty. Fourth, active imagination. Jung's most powerful technique. Sit quietly and let your anima appear as a figure in your imagination. Talk to her. Ask her what she needs. Ask her what she's been trying to tell you through all those unavailable women you've chased. She might tell you she's tired of being projected onto others. She might reveal that she's been waiting for you to develop the very qualities you've been seeking in someone else. Because here's Jung's ultimate insight. The woman you've been looking for your entire life isn't out there. She's in here, waiting to be integrated. And when you finally bring her home, when you develop your own emotional depth, your own creativity, your own inner wisdom, something amazing happens. You stop being attracted to unavailable women because you're no longer seeking completion. You're choosing from wholeness. Here's what happens when you integrate your anima. Everything you thought you knew about attraction completely flips. I've seen this transformation happen over and over again. Men who spent decades chasing unavailable women suddenly find themselves drawn to completely different types of people. The magnetic pull toward drama disappears. The need for conquest evaporates. The addiction to emotional unavailability just stops. But it's not what you think. You don't suddenly become attracted to nice girls or safe choices. That's still your mind trying to categorize women instead of seeing them as individuals. What actually happens is far more profound. You start seeing women as human beings instead of as solutions to your inner emptiness. Remember that stage too? Anima, who was obsessed with Helen of Troy, the one who needed the impossible goddess, the untouchable ideal. When she's integrated, she stops demanding perfection from others because she's found completeness within you. You no longer need someone to be your missing piece because you're no longer missing pieces. This creates what Jung called conscious relating, attraction based on genuine compatibility rather than unconscious projection. You start noticing things you never paid attention to before. How does she treat people when she's stressed? What makes her laugh? How does she handle conflict? What are her actual values, not just the image she projects, the woman who used to seem boring because she was emotionally available? You suddenly see her depth, her stability, her capacity for real intimacy. The drama queen who used to feel exciting. You recognize the chaos for what it is, an external reflection of internal unrest. But here's the beautiful paradox. When you stop needing someone to complete you, you become infinitely more attractive to the right people. Think about it. A man who's integrated his anima has developed emotional intelligence, creative expression, spiritual depth, and inner wisdom. He's not desperately seeking validation because he's learned to validate himself. He's not projecting his unmet needs because he's met them internally. This man doesn't chase, he chooses. He doesn't fall in love with fantasies. He builds love with reality. Women can sense this immediately. They feel the difference between a man who needs them to fill his emptiness and a man who wants them to share his fullness. Jung observed that integrated men often experience what he called synchronistic relationships, connections that feel destined, but are based on genuine compatibility rather than unconscious compulsion. These relationships have a completely different quality. They're built on mutual respect rather than projected idealization. They grow stronger over time rather than weaker as reality sets in. They create stability rather than emotional chaos. So that woman you can't stop thinking about, the one who's been mysteriously unavailable, perfectly out of reach. You might find that as you integrate your anima, your obsession with her simply fades. Not because you're forcing yourself to move on, but because your unconscious is no longer using her as a screen for your projections. And in that space where obsession used to live, something new appears. The capacity to love consciously. Remember how we started? I asked you, what if the woman you can't stop thinking about isn't even real? Now you know the answer. She wasn't real as a person you could possess, but she was the most real thing in your entire journey, your own anima, calling you home to yourself. Every unavailable woman you've ever chased was wearing the same archetypal face. Every hollow ache was your soul recognizing what it needed to integrate. You weren't falling in love with ghosts. You were falling in love with the missing pieces of yourself. The question was never, why can't I have her? The question was always, what part of me is she trying to show me? This changes everything about how you approach relationships, creativity, and your own emotional development. When you stop seeking completion through others, you become capable of genuine love. When you integrate your anima, you access creativity and emotional intelligence you never knew existed. This is how you break the cycle. Not by finding the right woman, but by becoming the whole man. To unlock your full potential, watch my video on shadow integration. It reveals how the people who trigger you most and the ones you hate are actually showing you the hidden parts of yourself waiting to be reclaimed. Here's a question that only makes sense now after this journey. If your greatest romantic obsessions were actually your psyche trying to guide you toward wholeness, what does that tell you about the intelligence of your unconscious mind? Think about how differently you see that woman now. That's the power of completing a circle of understanding. If this journey has transformed how you see attraction and relationships, you're ready for the deeper circles of wisdom we explore here. Join a community that sees projections as teachers, obsessions as guidance, and every trigger as a gift. And to unlock even more of your hidden potential, watch my deep dive into Jung's shadow theory. It's the key to understanding why your greatest triggers are actually your greatest teachers. Because the woman you've been seeking was never out there. She was always within, waiting for you to come home.